Everyone in the company was shipping me and the CEO. To stop the rumors, I posted on my moments late at night, just got married. Busy. Don't at me. Unexpectedly, the CEO followed up right after with his own post, just got married. Wife's busy. Don't at me. Rumors had been swirling, both openly and subtly, that I was dating my boss. In an effort to protect my job and stop the gossip from reaching Brian Kramer, who supposedly had a longtime first love, I tried to shut everything down with a simple post. But I hadn't expected him to add fuel to the fire himself. Within a minute of Brian's post, the company group chat exploded to 99+ messages. Our ship is real? Who else is screaming? Shy little bunny and cold abstinent wolf? Secretary ex-boss? Forbidden office romance? Count me in. The endless barrage of messages made my heart sink, especially because Brian Kramer was also in that group. Very few people knew the real reason Brian had always kept his distance from women. He had a childhood sweetheart. He was loyal. Devoted. Waiting for her return. And how did I know? Well, embarrassingly, I've had a one-sided crush on Brian since we were students. Of course I know the inside story. And I also know that this rumor was trampling right on his bottom line. I smiled bitterly. This kind of shipping everything only hurts me. I could practically see my termination notice waving at me from afar. Finally, someone tried to stop the flood of speculation and blessings. It's so late. Everyone, stop messaging. I nodded furiously in front of my phone, silently thanking that kind soul. But the very next message knocked the breath out of me. Boss and Mrs. Boss are busy chatting tonight. Let's not disturb. #smirk. So thoughtful. Thanks for the express pass to unemployment. Frustrated, I scratched my head, when another notification popped up. It was from Brian. I opened it with dread, only to see something even more shocking. Brian Kramer, good night, everyone. No attendance penalties for being late tomorrow. Before my brain had time to reboot, a private message arrived from him. Bring your household registration and ID tomorrow. You'll need them. Of course. He wanted me to come in for official termination procedures. How considerate. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know those documents were needed to quit. I woke up early, picked a long white dress, and put on light makeup. Even if I were getting fired, I wanted to go out with dignity. Just as I stepped out the door, a bright red Maserati pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down slowly, revealing a jawline sharper than my life plans. It was Brian Kramer. He was wearing a crisp, thin white shirt. It had been 11 years since I'd last seen him in white. And in that moment, he looked just like he had back then. A cold, distant god untouched by the mortal world. He frowned slightly and spoke in a low voice. Joanna, do you have everything? I nodded blankly and got in the car. When his dry, emotionless tone reminded me of reality, I quietly withdrew my hand from the front passenger door and walked to the back seat. Brian was my boss. And today, he came to drive me to get fired. But as soon as I got in the car, Brian, normally silent, started a conversation. Looks like you know where we're headed today. Of course, boss. I already guessed last night that I'd be fired. What I didn't expect was such full-service termination, with the boss himself coming to escort me. So, are you asking if I'm willing? As if I had a choice? The boss shows up himself. How could I possibly say no? Of course I'm willing. Whatever you say. Good. That was oddly cheerful. And based on my 6 months working under him, I knew one thing for sure, Brian Kramer never sounded this pleased. I thought back over those 6 months of working as his secretary. I had been careful, professional, never let my personal feelings interfere, never crossed any lines. And yet, the idea of firing me made him happy? He must really hate me. If people were spreading rumors about him being in love with someone he didn't know or care for, of course he'd want to set the record straight. Especially someone as loyal and self-controlled as Brian. Suddenly, Brian said, "We're here. The Civil Affairs Bureau." I looked up, confused. "Wait, we need to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, to get fired." He looked at me and said, "We're getting married." A few minutes later, I walked out of the office with a red marriage certificate in my trembling hands. After 11 years of secretly loving Brian Kramer, I had married him. Why did he choose to marry me? That was the only question looping in my head. Brian glanced at the red booklet in his hands, face unreadable. Then he spoke lightly. "I needed a Mrs. Kramer to cancel my family's arranged marriage plans. Now that everyone already thinks we're married, we might as well roll with it. Saves a lot of trouble." He pulled out a card and handed it to me. "Don't worry. As Mrs. Kramer, I'll treat you well. All the properties under my name will be transferred to you today. Use this card freely. And if you have other requests, just say so." What was I expecting? A fairy tale? I had known him for 11 years. He had only known me for 6 months. Sorry, boss. I wasn't thinking clearly. I have no interest in being your business partner. Let's divorce. Brian's expression turned impatient. The air pressure dropped sharply around him. There's a 2-month cooling-off period. Joanna, I suggest you think carefully about what I'm offering you. Then please come back in 2 months. Brian hated complications. He never tolerated disruptions to his plans. Sure enough, his face fell, and he turned to leave. But a few steps later, he stopped. Wait here. I'll go get the car. After adjusting my emotions, I snapped back into professional mode. Boss, the board meeting is at 2 p.m., site visit with the partner company at 4, and at 6. Brian tugged at his tie, visibly annoyed. Cancel everything. You're coming with me to an event. Pick how you want to call me, Brian, or hubby. Yes, boss. Brian was a notorious workaholic. He never canceled meetings for anything. Which meant this event must be with someone important. And if he wanted me to call him Brian or hubby, he wanted to make our relationship public. To someone specific. I already had a guess. And when we arrived, it was confirmed. Diana Bogart, his childhood sweetheart, was back from overseas. The moment I saw her, I instinctively glanced at my dress. A discounted piece from some random store. Still, it was the best I had. She, on the other hand, wore the latest limited edition designer dress from abroad. Wherever she went, she was the center of attention. In high school, and still now. I nervously looked at Brian beside me. As expected, his gaze was locked on her. Excuse me, boss. I'm not feeling well. I think I'll go. I clutched the hem of my dress. Just as I was about to turn, a warm, strong hand wrapped around my waist. Stay with me a while. I'll take you home soon. His low, gentle voice brushed against my ear. And calmed my turbulent heart. We walked together toward Diana Bogart. She tucked her hair elegantly behind her ear and smiled. As we approached, she reached out with a graceful gesture. Every movement was poised and refined. But her eyes never left Brian. Not even for a second. Brian. Long time no see. Brian didn't shake her hand. He merely gave a faint and then turned to look at me. Having accompanied Brian to numerous formal events, I understood the basics of high society etiquette. And I understood what he meant. He wanted to use me to make his beloved Diana jealous. I smiled politely and reached out to take the hand Diana had extended midair. Miss Bogart, I'm sorry, my husband is under strict wife management. Please accept my apology on his behalf. With that, I picked up the wineglass beside me and downed it in one gulp. Diana let out a soft laugh. Miss Bigelow, you and I are quite alike in many ways, even our names. Miss Bogart, it's an honor to be compared to you. I forced a smile to hold myself together. Just one offhand comment, and the confidence I had barely pieced together crumbled completely. Diana and Joanna, what she meant was painfully obvious. Brian had found someone who even had a similar name to replace her. But there could only be one Mrs. Kramer. And in my heart, I was no substitute for anyone. After a long silence, Brian finally spoke. My wife isn't feeling well. Miss Bogart, please excuse us from your welcome dinner. A flicker of satisfaction rose in my chest. Was he standing up for me? But it vanished just as quickly. More likely, he just didn't want Diana to get the wrong idea. I thought Diana would try to stop us. But she didn't say a word, she simply watched us leave, calm and composed, as if everything was already in her grasp. And maybe it was. Diana had every reason to feel confident. She and Brian were childhood sweethearts. Their families had been close for generations. The two had even been betrothed since birth. If she hadn't insisted on studying abroad and quarreled with Brian back then, she would already be Mrs. Kramer today. And me? A girl with no parents, no background, what right did I have to stand against her? If I didn't happen to look like Diana, or share a similar name, I probably wouldn't have even made it past the first round of interviews. Mrs. Kramer, what are you thinking about? I snapped out of it. Boss, we can still make the afternoon appointments. Should I reschedule? The show was over. Time to return to reality. Reschedule. Brian spat the word out, clearly irritated, then drove off alone. I stood there, dazed. But reason quickly overtook my sense of humiliation, and I held back my tears. Kicking off my heels, I followed the GPS to the nearest bus stop. As the saying goes, when your luck is down, nothing goes smoothly. A few steps later, it started pouring rain, without warning. I looked up at the sky and silently whispered, thanks, heavens, for the well-timed rain. Now no one will notice I'm crying. Beep beep beep. A car horn startled me, and I quickly moved aside to make room. I turned, ready to apologize to the driver, and instead fell into a warm embrace. I didn't need to look up. The faint scent told me it was Brian. Sorry, boss. I got your shirt dirty. I tried to steady my voice, but I couldn't hide the quiver in my tone. Without saying a word, Brian picked me up in his arms, steadily, securely. "Mrs. Kramer, let's go home." He said it softly, so softly it felt like a secret meant only for the two of us. And for just a moment, I truly felt like the only Mrs. Kramer in his world. "At the entrance to my building, boss, you can just drop me off here." He nodded, but didn't actually listen. He drove straight into the underground parking lot. "Boss, really, it's fine, I can go up myself." Once again, just lip service. He followed me, step by slow step. What is going on? Why does Brian seem like a completely different person today? Was he planning to move in? No way. This was the man who'd kept himself chaste for over a decade, for Diana Bogart. "Boss, I'm here. Good night." I pointed at my door. Brian, staring at it, said nothing. In that brief silence, I ran through 100 different excuses in my head to stop him from staying the night. Finally, he opened his mouth. "Not going to invite your husband in for a bit?" Without thinking, I blurted out the most reasonable excuse I'd come up with. I got soaked in the rain. Feeling a little dizzy. Not convenient. The moment I said it, I regretted it. Brian raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled. But then realization dawned in his eyes, and he began stepping toward me, one slow step at a time. I backed up until I hit the wall. "Mrs. Kramer, would you care to tell me what you're thinking?" "And no, nothing really. We're legally married now. If you want." His gaze dropped to my lips, then continued downward. "No. I don't want to." Panicked, I used my fingerprint to unlock the door and slipped inside like a runaway criminal. Today's Brian wasn't the Brian I knew. He felt like a completely different person. Did something happen with Diana? I stared at the red marriage certificate on the table. I still couldn't believe I had actually married the man I fell for at first sight. That first sight felt like it was just yesterday. It was the first day of high school. There was a tradition, upperclassmen gave tours to incoming freshmen. I was rebellious, stubborn, and not a fan of rules. So after roll call, I snuck out of the group and wandered the campus on my own. I ended up in front of a teaching building. From inside, I heard beautiful piano music drifting through the windows. Drawn in, I followed the sound until I found myself in front of a classroom. Inside, a boy in a white shirt was playing the piano, his back facing the door. I stood there, mesmerized, completely unaware of the threshold at the door. I tripped and fell, hard. The noise broke the song. I scrambled to my feet and bowed in apology, flustered. "Are you okay, freshman?" A clear, clean voice cut through the air. I looked up instantly. The sunlight poured in from behind him, outlining his frame like a halo. The breeze tousled his hair. And in that moment, my heart fluttered wildly. Love at first sight, born on the wings of youth. "What's your name?" "Hi, freshman. I'm Brian Kramer, from Class 1, Grade 11. I muttered under my breath, "Brian Kramer, what a nice name. It sounds like something out of a novel. If only I could be the heroine." My face flushed red from my own thoughts. Afraid he'd notice, I turned and ran for my life. Just as I was leaving that day back in high school, I bumped into a tall, confident girl with a high ponytail and a commanding presence. Later, I learned her name, Diana Bogart. And she was widely known as Brian's girlfriend. They were both born into elite families. I, on the other hand, was just the daughter of a nouveau riche businessman. My mother passed away during the summer after my entrance exams. My father? He only cared about his business. In order to get his attention, I went from being the well-behaved girl everyone praised to a rebellious troublemaker. Then, in my second year of high school, my father went bankrupt and died of depression. I became a true orphan, unwanted and alone. The money he left barely covered my tuition through graduation. After that, I had no more room to act out. I was placed in a welfare home and transferred to a rougher public school. Looking back, I was grateful I hadn't humiliated myself in front of Brian back then. We were never meant to be part of the same world. But a person you fall for at first sight, it's hard to stop loving them. I worked hard to build a better life for myself, hoping that maybe, someday, I could stand beside him. The year after I finished grad school, I submitted my resume to Brian's company. Whatever the reason, I got hired, and became his secretary. In the 6 months I'd worked beside him, I'd never made any serious mistakes. I believed it was my ability that earned the job, not some resemblance to Diana. Even though our relationship had technically changed, the way we interacted hadn't. That moment at the Civil Bureau still felt like a ridiculous dream. "Boss, the partner company will be sending their new director to the meeting today. Do you want to attend in person?" "No." Brian didn't even hesitate. Normally, I wouldn't have mentioned such a routine meeting. But today's guest was Miss Bogart. His pen froze mid-stroke. He lifted his head slightly, then lowered it again, continuing to write. "I know. Cancel tonight's gala. I already have an appointment with Director Bogart." Yes, sir. I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Diana was the director. Of course he knew she was coming. I was trying to act clever, and only ended up embarrassing myself. But tonight's gala is with President Henry. His project as One Lanyard Group is also bidding on, so... Before I could finish, Brian slammed his pen onto the table with a sharp crack. Whatever. If you want to go, then go. Understood. I'll leave you to it. He was clearly upset. Why? Was it because I was interfering with his date with his old flame? Since Diana returned, Brian, once the definition of a workaholic, had broken his own rules multiple times. Maybe he only chose to marry me because he didn't know she was coming back. Now that she had, he was probably regretting that rushed marriage. Thankfully, it was only for 2 months. Once the cooling-off period ended, I'd return the title of Mrs. Kramer to Diana. That evening, Brian left work early. Many coworkers saw him leave with Diana. And of course, they came to me first, phones in hand, photos loaded. Joanna, aren't you married to the boss? I forced a smile. Yes, I did get married. But not to the boss. Anyway, the marriage won't last long. No need for outsiders to know. Then, do you know who the real Mrs. Kramer is? I guess it's Director Bogart. Just like that, the topic shifted. Everyone slowly moved away from me and began discussing Diana and Brian. I mumbled an excuse. Sorry, I've got to run a quick errand for a project. But in truth, no one noticed. They were too deep in gossip. I slipped away quietly. That stupid gala, I hadn't even planned on going. But during a conversation with President Henry earlier that day, he'd warned me, if I bailed again, he'd cancel our cooperation. He said, as Brian's secretary, all I had to do was show up, drink a little, and it'd count as Brian attending. Maybe we'd even secure the contract. After weighing my options, I agreed. A few drinks for $1 million contract? I'd get a percentage and earn a few tens of thousands. For someone desperate for money like me, that deal was worth it. Standing outside the private room, I took a deep breath, pulled out my best professional smile, and pushed the door open. Joanna, being late means a penalty drink. The greasy middle-aged man in the center smirked, signaling the waiter to pour. President Henry, 1 drink isn't enough to show our sincerity. How about I down 3 instead? I didn't know if the waiter had been warned in advance, but the glasses were filled to the brim. 3 drinks in quick succession burned down my throat. Now that's sincerity. I pulled out the contract from my bag and handed it over. Shall we take a look? No rush. He signaled the waiter to pour another. Having worked with Brian for 6 months, I knew this type well. Whoever drinks best, wins the deal. I'll drink. You take your time. Joanna's got a great tolerance. And you know what they say, how you drink reflects your character. Let's see how good your character really is, and then I'll consider signing. Fair enough. I downed another glass. 3 rounds in, my stomach was churning. I excused myself and rushed to the bathroom, barely holding back the urge to vomit. Luckily, I'd taken anti-hangover pills beforehand, so I wasn't too dizzy. Babe, are you okay? I saw your message and came right away. It was Stacia, my college friend. 2 women from out of town, leaning on each other, we'd become close. She happened to be dining in the same restaurant that night, so I'd asked her to wait around just in case I needed help. I'm fine, Stacia. I could still drink 300 more rounds with those guys. After throwing up, I felt a little better. I patted her shoulder to reassure her and returned to the room. President Henry was already slurring. A few more drinks and he'd be putty. I reopened the contract and handed him a pen. President Henry, shall we sign? Sure, but there's still 1 bottle left. Waste not, right? I'll drink. Without hesitation, I picked up the bottle and drank straight from it. Just 1 more step, and the commission would be mine. Bang! The door slammed open. Everyone turned. Except me. I was still halfway through the bottle, afraid to stop. A second later, the bottle was snatched from my hands. Joanna, that's enough. I was pulled into a warm embrace. A voice trembled above my head, gentle and unfamiliar. I wanted to push him away, but had no strength left. Don't be scared, Joanna. It's me, Charles. Charles Cowie, one of my only 2 true friends. We met after I transferred schools in high school, and later went to the same university. Hearing his voice calmed me. Still, I was married now. And appearances mattered. I gently pushed him away, steadying myself with the table. He kept one hand on my arm, ready to help. The contract, it's not signed yet. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. His tone was as gentle as if he were comforting a child. President Cowie? I didn't know Miss Bigelow was with you. President Henry sobered up instantly, stuttering in panic. Sign it. Charles gave the order, no room for discussion. Yes, sir. The man scurried to sign the contract and handed it to me like a scared schoolboy. Thank you. It was the first time I'd ever seen a client hand over a contract so humbly. It felt weird. President Cowie and your wife, please take care on your way out. No, no. I'm not his wife. Just as I tried to explain, Charles, stone-faced a second ago, suddenly broke into a grin and dragged me away. He didn't even give me a chance to respond. I knew Charles came from money, but I didn't realize it was that kind of money. The kind that made a much older, greasy CEO bow and stammer in front of him. Still a little dizzy, I clutched the signed contract with a huge grin. Grinning, I gave Charles a hearty smack on the back. President Cowie, if you'd told me about your family fortune earlier, I might have applied to be your secretary instead. Charles winced. Ow, he hissed, but didn't say anything else. He just smiled at me. Actually, I have a position that's perfect for you. Flexible hours, high pay, zero accountability. Interested? Of course. What position? Wife. I burst out laughing and slapped his back again and again. 6 months apart and now you're funny too. I laughed so hard I felt a rush of acid rise from my stomach. Ugh, wait, I'm gonna throw up. I staggered over to a trash can and started heaving. Joanna. A chill ran down my spine. Was I hallucinating from the vomiting? Why did I hear Brian's voice? Joanna. Brian's voice dropped an octave, cold and low. Oh no. Not a hallucination. I turned around stiffly and saw him standing not far away. His brow was tightly furrowed, veins bulging on his forehead. His lips were pressed into a thin line, and his hands clenched tightly by his sides. Charles, who had been supporting me, immediately straightened up. Gone was his playful tone. He stepped protectively in front of me and stared down Brian with quiet hostility. Joanna, who is this guy? My boss. Charles blurted out without thinking, what kind of jerk boss sends a girl to drink with sleazy men? Fire him. My heart stopped. Charles really had no filter. Thankfully, Brian didn't react to the insult. He just stared at me with simmering anger. Come here. Charles blocked me again. Why should she? Because I'm her husband. Brian's voice was cold. His eyes locked on me. Mrs. Kramer, aren't you going to explain to your friend that you're married? Charles looked at me in disbelief, eyes dimming slightly. Yeah. We got married yesterday. Thanks for helping tonight, Charles. I'm heading home. Good night. Charles loosened his clenched fists. When he saw me walk toward Brian, he said nothing more and quietly left. Brian was furious tonight. Not that I had any idea what, exactly, he was mad about. Mrs. Kramer. Home. That was the only thing he said the entire ride to my apartment. Maybe it was the alcohol, but I was angry too. Tears were threatening to spill, and I forced them down. Brian, always perceptive, noticed something was wrong. But instead of asking gently, he snapped, Joanna, what now? That made it worse. Why do you care? I shouted. He paused, perhaps realizing his tone was off. Then, in a much softer voice, he said, argue if you want, but let's do it inside, okay? It's the middle of the night. We'll disturb the neighbors. Fine. He had a point. All right. Get in, then. Brian entered first, casually surveying the apartment. I'm tired. Let's argue tomorrow. Where's the bedroom? Without thinking, I pointed it out. It wasn't until he stepped inside that my brain kicked in. Wait a minute. I'm the one who wanted to fight. I stomped into the bedroom after him, eyes wide, trying my best to glare. Brian stood silently, watching me. His gaze, soft, deep, was the same one he used when looking at Diana. A look I could only describe as tender. Was he thinking of her again? We stared at each other for a long, long time. Caught in the storm of jealousy and raw emotion, I finally lost control. I grabbed his tie, tiptoed, and kissed his lips. Brian looked shocked at first, eyes wide in surprise. Then his dark pupils began to darken, his breath turned heavy, and he took over. He pushed me onto the bed, kissing recklessly from my temples to my collarbone. By the time the last layer of clothing was peeled away, I managed to summon one final bit of reason. Will you take responsibility for this? I will. Brian's voice was hoarse, yet firm. Shattering my last defense. That night, we were wild. The room, utterly wrecked. I woke up at noon the next day. The bed beside me was cold. He must have left long ago. I remembered little of what we said. Only what we did. Like how he carried me to the shower. How he helped me change into pajamas. My cheeks were burning. I covered my face with both hands, only to feel something cool on my finger. I looked down in surprise. A ring. Perfect fit on my left hand. It wasn't flashy, but it had weight. It glowed softly, beautifully, in the morning light. I couldn't stop smiling, until one question sobered me. Was Brian staking a claim? Why would he give me a ring like this? Rich men don't just hand out rings for fun, right? Ding. A message notification snapped me out of my thoughts. It was from Brian. And unfortunately, anything about him now reminded me of what happened last night. Instant embarrassment. I opened the message. Brian, I'm outside. Open the door. Of course. The moment was bound to come. I just didn't expect it to come this fast. I sat up, panicked, and tried to get dressed. Ow. The moment I stood, my legs gave out and I fell to the floor. After a minute, I managed to pull myself up, grab the scattered clothes, toss them into the bathroom, and rush to the door. Just before I opened it, I hesitated. I'd been wondering how I should face Brian. But what if he was wondering the same? The answer came the second I opened the door. Brian was not wondering anything. He stood there with the same cold, aloof face, as if nothing had happened. Boss, what are you doing here? His eyes flickered with unease, though I didn't notice at the time. You're mad? I wouldn't dare. I'm sorry. We spoke at the same time. I added quickly, sorry for what? I stared at him in surprise. Brian Kramer, saying I'm sorry? Last night was your first time. I didn't get your consent before, that happened. It was also my first time. I didn't handle it well. I hurt you. Stop. My face turned crimson. What kind of pure-hearted man says stuff like that with a straight face? I was practically combusting. I quickly changed the subject. I'd already noticed the 2 large suitcases behind him. Boss, what's with the luggage? You moving? Yes. Starting today, I'm living with you. There are more things, I'll have someone bring them later. What the hell did I just hear? Living together? That was somehow worse than the pure boy confession. Boss, my tiny apartment can't hold someone as mighty as you. Please find another palace to reside in. But there was no stopping him. Brian walked right in, carrying 1 suitcase in each hand, heading straight for the bedroom. Brian, if you're staying here, don't you at least owe me a reason? That's the first time you've called me Brian. Even though this man was technically my walking paycheck, I couldn't stop myself from rolling my eyes. Then I gave in, grumbling, sorry, boss. From now on, if you call me boss outside work hours, I'll dock your year-end bonus. 1,000 per slip. Fine, Bo. I changed course mid-word. Hubby. Soup's on the stove. I'll go serve you some. As I watched Brian walk toward the kitchen, only one thought echoed in my mind, he's hiding something. Brian, can you at least tell me why you're staying in my tiny apartment? The soup's nourishing. Nourishing, my ass. He was clearly dodging the question. Now I was even more convinced he was hiding something. Fine. If he didn't want to tell me, I wouldn't ask again. It wasn't the only thing on my mind anyway. I raised my hand and showed him the ring. When did you buy this? Brian stared at the ring, seemingly lost in thought. There was a faint gleam in his eyes, and if I hadn't been watching closely, I wouldn't have caught the soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips. A long time ago. A long time ago? That means, he bought it before he even knew me? So the ring wasn't meant for me? Got it. Boss, has today's schedule changed? Do I need to rearrange anything? To avoid getting docked pay, I added quickly, I didn't take leave today, so technically this is working time. Work topic, I swear. I filed leave for you. So now it's break time. No work talk. Everything this afternoon has been cancelled. I was speechless. Double tap, 666. The rich really do whatever they want. An entire afternoon of meetings, worth 10 times my annual salary, cancelled, just like that. So, what are we doing this afternoon? Meeting my elders. The word okay nearly slipped out. Until I glanced at the ring and remembered, there's no need for this. In 57 days, we'll be divorced. The room fell silent. And in that silence, I could practically hear Brian grinding his molars. He was holding something back. I'll only ever be a widower, never divorced. The words slipped out of his mouth. Then realization hit, and he stiffened. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. I'm sorry. Afraid he'd spiral even further, I quickly replied, it's fine. I'll go with you. I rifled through my entire closet. The most formal thing I had was still the white dress I wore for our marriage certificate photo. Sitting in the car, I opened my phone to do some emergency research. I even posted anonymously asking, tips for meeting my in-laws. Husband is from an ultra-rich family. Top comment? Just be from a matching family. That's all. Another reply hit me where it hurt. If I were Diana, I'd have a powerful family behind me. But there was no if. The more I read, the worse I felt. I shut off my phone and closed my eyes to rest. Some time later, I faintly heard someone calling me, Anna. I opened my eyes. Only Brian was beside me. Must have been a dream. Wait, were we at a hospital? No, this wasn't a dream. Brian leaned over and gently undid my seatbelt, his voice low. I only have one elder, my grandfather. He's not doing well. He's staying in the hospital for treatment. I nodded, carefully asking, so, no one else? No one. His tone was definite. And strangely, I felt a small pang of empathy. Let's go see him. Even though there was just one elder, I was a nervous wreck. I'd been alone for so long, I'd forgotten how to interact with family. What if I said something wrong and upset him? Don't be nervous. Grandpa's very kind. Oh God. Even Brian could tell I was nervous? Still in thought, I felt Brian gently tug me into the room. On the hospital bed lay an elderly man with silver hair, and 4 in his arm, and little color in his face. Grandpa, look who I brought to visit you. There was a warmth in Brian's smile I'd never seen before. The old man's face was so gentle, all my nerves instantly melted away. I opened my mouth, about to introduce myself. When he spoke first. Joanna, come here, darling. Anna. For a moment, I panicked. Was he calling for Diana? But I smiled brightly anyway and said, yes, Grandpa. I walked over and knelt beside him. Brian, Grandpa. I'm going to step out and take a call. Brian nodded. Then, before leaving, he added playfully, take your time. I want to have a little chat with my precious granddaughter-in-law. After Brian left, I helped Grandpa sit up. Good girl. Thank you for choosing Brian. His first sentence caught me off guard. Grandpa, don't say that. Your grandson is amazing, he's got plenty of admirers. He patted my hand firmly. But the way he held it felt heavier than that. As if he were entrusting me with something precious. I know my grandson. He has emotional detachment issues. Bottles up everything. Doesn't know how to express himself. Not many girls can handle his temper. But you can. Then he sighed. It's not his fault, you know. Brian's mother passed away young. My unfilial son didn't care for him at all. He even brought another woman to her funeral. Since then, Brian's had a deep resentment toward all women. By the time he hit middle school, he was totally out of control. Fighting, getting into trouble, I had to bail him out of the police station more times than I can count. Luckily, you showed up. In his 3rd year, Brian suddenly started behaving, studying again. Because of you. Just yesterday, I spoke with his therapist. He's been showing more emotions lately. That's a good thing. But you must stay by his side. Otherwise, I'm afraid he'll do something foolish. Is he really your only family? Grandpa nodded with another sigh. Pretty much. After his mother died, he cut ties with the rest of the family. Then he told me stories from Brian's childhood. In my 11 years of secretly loving him, I realized, I didn't know him at all. I only ever saw the polished surface. Never the pain underneath. And the more I listened, the more I felt, I should give Brian back to Diana. This Joanna was never meant to replace that Diana. After all, I didn't even know him in middle school. If he was becoming more stable now, was it really because I was here? Or because she was back? Halfway through the conversation, Brian returned. But when he heard Grandpa recounting his embarrassing past, he turned red and escaped again, mumbling something about getting food. Grandpa and I exchanged a smile. We both knew it was a flimsy excuse. Brian could call a 5-star hotel with a snap of his fingers. Who needed to personally go out and buy food? While he was gone, Grandpa told me more, from Brian's birth to his college years. The summary? Brian was ridiculously excellent. Award after award, grade after grade, suitors by the dozens, but always, there was one name in his heart. Her name was Joanna. Grandpa finished, just as Brian returned. Let's eat. True to form, Brian didn't disappoint. The food was an extravagant feast. During the meal, Grandpa teased him non-stop, and even pulled me aside, asking me to take good care of him. The mood throughout was light and joyful. It's been ages since I felt this happy, Grandpa said. Thank you. Truth be told, it had been ages for me too. But I didn't say anything, didn't want to worry him. When it was time to leave, I found it hard to say goodbye. Grandpa's eyes shimmered with tears. And I, who hadn't felt this kind of love in so long, couldn't hold back either. Grandpa, I'll come visit again soon. Good girl, Joanna. Promise me you'll come see me. Just before we left the room, I let go of Brian's hand, turned around, and said what I'd been meaning to say, Grandpa, I'm Joanna. He smiled. Of course you are, child. Of course I know. I never got the chance to visit him again. The hospital called before I could. Grandpa was in critical condition. That afternoon, a violent storm rolled in. During the meeting, Brian kept glancing at the window, distracted and fidgety. His unease was contagious, I couldn't explain it, but something felt wrong. Before the meeting even ended, he suddenly bolted from the conference room. My gut told me, it was about Grandpa. I didn't even hesitate. I ran after him. By the time I reached the parking lot, he was about to get in the car. His eyes were empty, dazed, as if he'd lost his soul. The rain was pouring. There was no way he could drive like this. I offered to take the wheel. He said nothing, just gave a slight nod. We rushed to the hospital. But we were still too late. Grandpa was already under the white sheet. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't dare make a sound. I knew what it was like to lose someone. No one wants to hear sobbing when they're drowning in grief. Brian must have wanted some time alone with him. Go see Grandpa. I steadied my voice and whispered gently. Then, as his granddaughter-in-law, I quietly followed the doctor to take care of the paperwork. By the time everything was done, night had fallen. Brian hadn't said a word all afternoon. He didn't shed a single tear. That kind of silence, it was worse than I imagined. When it was all over, I didn't take Brian home. Instead, I drove him to the funeral home where Grandpa's body had been taken. We sat together in the car. Brian, I said softly, everything will be okay. I'll stay with you tonight. Let's keep Grandpa company one more night. He stared blankly at the building, not saying a word. I looked at him and continued, voice gentle, I understand how you feel. I've been there. In my second year of high school, the only family I had left passed away. That kind of loneliness, like it's choking you. You want to cry but there's no one to comfort you, and you still have to smile to survive. So I won't tell you not to be sad. But if you want, you can share it with me. That way, you don't have to carry it alone. Brian finally moved. He turned his head to look at me. In that moment, our eyes met. His gaze trembled, and I saw a faint shimmer of tears. After a long silence, he spoke, quiet, steady, you won't ever be alone again. Just one sentence. And I fell deeper into the love I'd tried so hard to hold back. Whether it was pity or not, I didn't care anymore. But what now? I'd planned to give him back to Diana, the words never left my mouth. Maybe, I could stay just one more night. Let go tomorrow. When Diana came, the funeral was simple. Only Brian and I kept vigil in the morning hall. After Grandpa passed, Brian had someone inform the Kramer family. Not a single one of them came to pay respects. Brian said it was better that way. Grandpa had always preferred peace and quiet. Around noon, Diana returned from out of town. She was back. Which meant I had to go. I quietly stepped out of the morning hall to give them space. But before I got far, Diana caught up to me. She took a deep breath and said seriously, don't go. I think you misunderstood something. What? Brian really, truly loves you. He's loved you for 13 years. Back in high school, after you left, he spiraled for a whole year. If you leave again, he'll break. Her words hit me like a freight train. Shock and joy crashing into each other. 13 years? But, we'd only known each other for 11. Let's sit over there, she suggested, pointing toward the hallway. I nodded quickly. Can you explain what you meant just now? Of course. You two are the most mismatched soulmates I've ever seen. Brian and I were childhood friends. Our families had a marriage pact. But he never liked me, he liked you. As for when it started, ask him. All I know is, without you, Brian wouldn't be who he is today. Honestly, he probably would have ended up in jail by now. But weren't you two, together in high school? Diana scoffed. All rumors. Poor me, always getting dragged in to block his admirers. Still, I was willing. I did like him once. But his heart only had room for you. I envy you so much. Tell me, why does childhood love never win against someone who just drops from the sky? I have the looks, the money, the brains. People line up to chase me. And yet, he chose you. This insecure little pauper. I nodded slowly. Honestly, I never believed anyone could beat the childhood sweetheart. But I heard him confess to you in high school. You must have misheard. When he said Anna, he meant you. All right, I'll stop. You two lovebirds need to sort things out. Oh, and Brian moving in with you? That was my idea. If you want to thank me, let your future kid call me godmother. Diana slung her bag over her shoulder. The breeze lifted her hair as she coolly brushed it back. I couldn't help but laugh. Your elegant image in my head is officially shattered. But honestly, you're kind of badass. She smirked. Takes one to know one. Screw elegance. Then she paused, turned back, and added, let me just say one more thing. You're the only girl I've ever fallen for through a guy's eyes. Joanna, you're more amazing than you think. See you next time. After she left, I sat there, playing her words over and over in my head. They say unrequited love is like living alone on an island. But after 11 years, I realized. I was never alone there. Excitement, regret, guilt, a mess of emotions. All I wanted right then, was to hold Brian. When I looked up, he was already standing not far away. His eyes avoided mine, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. He was holding something in again. Are you leaving me too? He spoke quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Brian, will you hold me? Okay. Just one simple word. And it soothed all the turbulence in his heart. Why had I never noticed how easily he listened to me? I leaned in close and whispered into his ear, Brian, from now on, you'll never be alone again. After we opened our hearts to each other, Brian became even more clingy. And finally, we stopped speaking at cross purposes. When he was upset, I would ask. When I was upset, he would ask. After our relationship went public at the company, we received nothing but blessings. Brian, in all his extravagant glory, dropped 200,000 yuan worth of red envelopes in the company group chat just to celebrate. Brian, where's mine? He pointed to himself and gave me a doting smile. Right here. Well, fair enough. With him around, I didn't need anything else. On our wedding day, neither Brian nor I had any family attending. But the scene was far from quiet. Our coworkers were causing a ruckus on stage, while Diana and Charles got into an all-out war over the bridal bouquet. Funny, really, those two love-phobic drama queens had once solemnly promised me they'd never get married. They were committed to the sea, king of flirts, and queen of freedom, as they called themselves. I clung to Brian's arm, watching the chaos unfold with a proud anti-smile. You two are getting married anyway. Why fight over flowers? That's right, someone chimed in. This pair of bickering idiots is tying the knot in a commercial marriage next month. I'd never marry her. I'd never marry him. Charles and Diana said in perfect unison. I nodded approvingly. Look at that. You two already have married couple telepathy. Brian echoed me calmly, You'll both be eating your words soon. I gave him a big thumbs up. That once untouchable, aloof godlike man had finally been pulled down to earth by me. After the wedding, while I was cleaning Brian's study, I accidentally came across a small box. I opened it and found a single button, underneath it, a folded slip of paper. It read, out of 3,000 dazzling things in this world, I love only 3, Joanna, Joanna, Joanna. Dated, March 3, 2010. 13 years ago. The exact time Brian first fell for me. That meant, this button must have something to do with me. But I couldn't remember anything. I stared at the box, trying to jog my memory. At some point, Brian had come up behind me. Joanna, can't remember? Why don't you ask me instead? Startled, I flinched, and the button flew out of my hand. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gone through your stuff. He chuckled softly, picked the button off the floor, and placed it in his palm. Anyone else might have thought this was jewelry. But I belong to you now, what's mine is yours. Besides, this button's always been yours. I just kept it, hidden. He pulled me into his arms. Do you remember that little alley you used to go to in middle school? The one where you fed stray cats, dogs, and a homeless guy. When he said that, memories began to surface. I had fed animals in so many alleys, but the one with a person in it, there was only one. It was sometime in the 7th grade. After night classes, I followed my usual route to feed the strays. That evening, I heard a rustling noise from the alley. I thought it was just a cat or a dog. But when I got closer, I saw a small, skinny figure crouched in the corner. I wasn't afraid. My parents had arranged bodyguards to wait at the alley entrance. And besides, the boy looked like he needed help. I took some food out of my bag, walked over, and handed it to him. Are you hungry? I have milk and cake. Here, take it. He didn't say a word. Didn't reach for the food either. So I placed it beside him and left. For a whole week, he was always there. Every time I came by, he kept his head low. His long hair covered most of his face. I assumed he was just a homeless teen. Every day, I'd spend some pocket money to buy him food. Until one night. I arrived to find him being bullied by a group of punks. I had my bodyguards restrain them. That was the first time he ever spoke to me. Can you tell me your name? Joanna. His voice was timid and young. It made me give my name without hesitation. After that night, I never saw him again. So you were, that boy? I gasped. That button, it was from your middle school uniform. I remember now. Brian smiled softly. Joanna, thank you. I smiled through tears. No, thank me. Thank that younger me for walking into that alley, and finding you. Looking back, I never imagined that the boy hiding in that alley would one day become my husband. For years, I thought my love for him was a lonely secret, buried deep and never to be returned. But it turns out, he had loved me, quietly, fiercely, long before I even knew. Now, when he holds my hand, when he whispers my name like a promise, I no longer feel like that insecure, invisible girl chasing light from afar. Because I am his light. And he was never out of reach. We missed each other once. But this time, we found our way home. Together.